day one of the Arise training in Calabria, Italy. So today we had a video introduction to the region of Calabria in southern Italy, explaining the problems that the south is facing. And we saw some very interesting videos that highlighted a place called Camini, which spoke about how the villages have been abandoned due to a lot of the younger people moving up to the north or abroad for better opportunities. And so it was very good to give us a bit of a background to the problems that are being faced and how the refugees and migrants are actually helping to regenerate these villages, so rebuilding and regenerating the economy. And after that, we had a bit of a networking session with all of the candidates. So it was very interesting to see the group of people that we have, very diverse. I would say that some of these people are experts in their fields. It was very enlightening for me to meet such a diverse group, and I think it would be very beneficial for us during the training to be able to lean on each other for our different experiences and different perspectives. So the ending of the first day was so far so good, and very enlightening. Day 2 of the training. Today we discussed understanding the migration issues of southern European countries. So today we had 2 lectures, one by Dr. Leonie Ansems de Vries from King's College London and another from Catherine Weatherhead from Queen Mary University. So we discussed the fundamental points of who is a migrant, where and what is the border, and what about this so-called crisis. So what we discovered was that in fact a migrant can be described as anybody who moves from one place to another, whether that be from persecution or for economical means. And also that this migrant crisis that Europe is currently facing is not solely a European problem. In fact, the actual numbers of it are that 84% of the world's refugees are hosted in developing countries. So the crisis that we perceive is actually what's been peddled in the media, using some very hot to topic words to create hysteria and crisis. As part of our discussions, we were separated into groups to discuss certain issues further. Now, my group, we decided to discuss borders. Now, what is a border? How many other kinds of borders are there aside from physical borders from crossing land? And I have included a video of our discussion just to give you some background. Day 2 of the training, part 2. During Catherine Weatherhead's talk, we spoke about the current issues facing migrants, and broadly we discussed asylum law, which a lot of them don't have any knowledge of, so they may then be persuaded to make statements that are not true or things that can be misconstrued. We also discussed the need for access to information because they are not aware of their rights. Some of them don't understand the terminology, and one of the major things that we discussed was the use of hotspots and the number of human rights violations that can occur there. So the overcrowding, the taking of people's fingerprints and they don't know why, sending people back to their country of origin if they don't mention certain key phrases, such as I'm fleeing persecution, and if they say things as I want to work. So overall, today's lectures and talks and group work was very interesting for me. It explored things that I hadn't, to be honest, really thought of, and I thought the actual figures for the crisis were very revealing to show that it is in fact not solely a European problem, and ultimately developing countries host the majority of migrants. But I think for me, in summation, the best statement, was in relation to the flow of migration, where migrants have said, we want to be legal, but how can we be legal? We are not on the earth, not in the sky, we are in between, which I think sums up their experience of being in complete limbo and not belonging to one or the other, and being left in a position where at any point they can be sent back to a country that they've had to escape from, or face violations of their human rights. in the search for either refugee status or somewhere safe to stay. Day 3 of the training. Talk by Alessandra Cugnetto, Assazione Integrazione Calabria. We discussed the different stages and the solutions that practitioners and institutions should put in place when migrants arrive, using southern Italy as an example. So we discovered that there are two stages. So the initial stage would be the hotspot, or they can then subsequently be put into a SPRA house. So we learned about all of the things that are there in place for migrants and refugees, and that it's better for them to be housed in small buildings, in small numbers, so perhaps between 5 or 8, rather than in mass camps of 100 or so, where the access to information and support is very sparse. We learnt about the Hope Project and subsequently visited a CAS house in Calabria, where we met some of the refugees and heard some of their personal stories. I was very moved by this visit and the hope that's given to these people after everything that they've been through, and to know that there are people out there that are actually looking after their best interests and want to integrate them as much as possible into Italian society. Day 3. Day 3. Talk by Matilda Spaldi from Ithaca Training, discussing mental health in refugees and how we can recognise mental health and how this may affect them. Now, I thought this talk was very enlightening. It was something that I hadn't considered in any sort of depth at all, but to think of all of the different stages of post-traumatic stress that they may be going through from their journeys and certain traumas prior to arriving in Italy, I think it is of great importance that this is looked into further, and it's something that we should use back home in the UK, into recognising the signs, what we can do to help them, and perhaps not giving them too much too soon, and acknowledging that there are things that they need to deal with, you know, to allow them to integrate better into society and become a fully functioning member of the said society. So I thought that this talk was absolutely moving and absolutely needed, and I think it should be something that's discussed at greater length. Day 4 of the Arise training. This morning we had a talk by priest Boris Karem, who initially hails from Armenia, was then moved on to Syria, and then came to Italy, and now acts as a priest who has an invested interest in refugees and how to help them. I thought this talk was very interesting. It was very interesting to see somebody who's had first-hand experience of this journey, how they were then integrated into Italian culture, how the church played a massive part in making them feel secure and knowing that this was the right thing to do. So overall, I was very interested in what he had to say. And I thought that it was interesting to see the aspect that religion can play in helping people to feel settled and bringing people together. I also noted the fact that he did mention that when he deals with refugees from other countries, he doesn't attempt to push his religion onto them, but respects their right to freedom of thought and different values. I thought it was a very interesting talk, and shone a new light on a different perspective for me. We discussed the importance of promoting European values as a means of tackling social exclusion with Matilda Spaldi from Ithaca Training. Now, through this discussion, we did a lot of group work that focused on what we thought were European values. And what we came to discover was that Europe itself isn't agreed on what European values are. And I think it's more an issue of personal and moral values. So it's very interesting to see what was considered European values, but those also differ from country to country within Europe. Now, there are some shared common values. However, it's very individual to each country. So as I say, this again was another interesting talk which made me think slightly outside of the box as to what do we actually define are European values. And it's a question that I think there isn't an answer to. We can generalize, but we cannot be specific for the continent of Europe as a whole. This afternoon, we had a meeting with some local cultural mediators. Now, I found this talk to be one of the most emotional for me so far of the training, to hear firsthand of the experiences that they had to go through in coming to Italy, and then also the experiences they faced in trying to integrate into Italy. So some of the ignorant comments that they were faced with, which it turns out was just a lack of knowledge of other people and other cultures. I was overwhelmed by their want and need to ensure that other people do not suffer, and that their problems are acknowledged, and they do whatever they can to support both the local community and the migrants and refugees that find themselves in this situation. As I say, for me, this was one of the most moving things, and I'm so grateful to them for taking the time out to speak with us and share their personal experiences, what they hope for the future, and also just their joie de vivre, their want for life for everybody, and to make sure that everybody performs to the best of their ability. So I thought it was absolutely, their role is absolutely integral to the process, and it's something that should be rolled out across other countries as well, because I think it is of the utmost importance. Following on from that, we then visited a local homeless centre, which was round the corner from our training. Now, this centre was initially just for Italian citizens who are homeless, but it now looks after refugees and migrants as well. It was very interesting to see the gentleman that runs it there speak from the heart, how he's so invested in making sure that everybody is looked after. It is only a stopgap of 24 hours, so it's not a long stay, but they do the best that they can to get people on the right footing, in the right direction, and signpost them to the next steps, which will be helpful for them, not just push them on to the next person. So overall today, whilst it was very emotional for me particularly, I can see the importance of these roles and the importance that the people themselves play. I thought it was very interesting to see that at the homeless centre, a way in which they get the local community to be involved, so to be directly in contact with these people, so that there isn't the fear, is that the local families cook for them. So then they get to meet each other. It's quite informal, and it creates social bonds, which I think is a great part in promoting social inclusion. So you see the person rather than the headline. So overall, as I say, today was also another good day. Day 5 of the training session with Ivan Kiaramide, Social Innovation for Inclusion. So today we discussed the promotion of education for migrants to promote inclusion. So we went through a lot of facts and figures about where migrants are included, so what sort of sectors they do work in. And we then ended up doing some group case studies on different types of migrants. So my group had a doctor from Syria who was highly qualified, so we had to discuss what we thought were the steps that would need to be taken to promote social inclusion for this individual. So what I have included to follow are videos and photographs of the product of our work and all the steps that we've taken. I thought today was a very integral part of the process, and it's something that we needed to discuss to get a better understanding of what help is actually available for migrants once the initial stages of SPRA and going through all the necessary steps are put in place. So what can we do to allow them to then be included in local society and to contribute. So as I say, overall again today, another interesting day. Day 6 of the training, we had our final session with Ivan Kiaramide discussing promoting entrepreneurship in refugees. So we discussed and brainstormed different ideas and best practices for them to increase their visibility, make business contacts, and to get their businesses off the ground. We also discussed a lot about current employment, where a lot of migrants and refugees were being exploited, so working in a tomato field and being paid €3 per crate to collect all day, and what's been in place to protect their rights. We also learned a lot about Funky Tomato, which is an organisation that promotes equal rights and equal pay for migrants and refugees for the work that they are doing. So that was also a very interesting point to see, and I was very impressed with the action taken by Funky Tomato to ensure better rights for all. Day 6 of the training, we have just returned from a visit to a public school that offers education for adult migrants. Now, this was a really heartwarming experience, and it really gave me faith in the system to see that the classes that they are put through, so the education isn't a bare minimum. They are required to learn Italian alongside another language and basic subjects such as maths, science, etc. It was very interesting and very nice to speak to the students and the teachers alike, and to see the actual work in practice, and to know that they have a full curriculum which will in fact set them up to be able to fully integrate and provide Day 6. We have just finished a talk with 2 migrant entrepreneurs. So one gentleman who hails from Asia, who migrated to Italy over 30 years ago, and a gentleman from Egypt who has been here under a year. It was very interesting to see the difference in their journeys, most notably that the gentleman that migrated here 30 years ago had a much easier experience. He was able to promote a product relating to his homeland, and the entire process of getting finance and being accepted into the local community was a lot easier. And he seems to have had quite a, he's quite happy, he's had an easier time of things, and it seems as though Italy was very welcoming to him. Now, on the side of the second gentleman, it seems like it's been a lot more difficult. Now, he has a very good business idea, which is to open a 24-hour bar, like a shisha bar, in Sant'Eufemia, which we questioned whether this was the right place for it. But I think his business model has great potential. The only problems that he's now facing is finding difficulties in a guarantor, somebody that will actually back his business. So, in effect, as much as his business idea is great, he just needs some help to get on his feet. Now, from what we've learned so far, and from speaking to him directly, I question whether he will receive the support and help that he needs to maximize his business and to also affect the local economy, which I think his business would do, because it's something that we haven't found in this local area. So I think the change would be great. I just hope that he does in fact find a guarantor that can help him to set up his business, and I wish him all the best for the future, because I think, as I say, ultimately he is the definition of an entrepreneur, and he just needs to be nurtured. Day 7, the final day of our training in Calabria, Italy. So today we discussed in groups our future cooperation and what we will take home from the training and what we have learned. So we discussed the partnerships between our organisations and the connections that we have made. We also discussed doing something for Refugee Week, and as such we came up with a hashtag that we thought all groups could use when discussing this, which is Arise Refugee Inclusion, so that all groups can add this hashtag to any information that we post and hopefully get this trending so people are aware of what is out there and take some learnings away from what we have also learned. The most important things that we will take home are the use of language, education, integration, as the key important things in these, basically in these circumstances, and how we can make it better. We also discussed the success of micro projects versus large projects. So we think that if migrants and refugees are helped on a smaller scale rather than en masse, it will have a more positive impact for those refugees and their journey to becoming integrated and included in their local community and feeling part of their local community, not as an additional add-on on the outskirts of our local community. Another thing that was discussed is the possibility of a King's College doing a upcoming event, which are lectures that are open to the public. And also what we thought would be great to continue is positive imagery workshops, which we found help a lot, I think, in addressing mental health issues and any other concerns that may face refugees and migrants overall.